Hey everybody, we're going to do our next set of notes. I'm going to jump right into it, get us going. It's a little late here on Wednesday, so I'm going to try to get through this as quick as possible and get it posted tonight so you guys can use it if you missed the live session on Tuesday. So we're still on Module 3, right? Life's matter and energy. Um, and as we're on Module 3, we did Lesson 1 a while ago, a couple weeks ago actually. I gave you guys about 2 weeks to kind of get caught up. So now we're jumping into Lesson 2. You can see the learning objectives off to the right. And the title of this set of notes is going to be the products of photosynthesis. Before we looked at the process of photosynthesis with the balanced equation and those type of things. And now we're going to move right into the products of photosynthesis. And basically, we're going to focus on the macromolecules. So I'll try to get through this. It's a little bit of a short set of notes, and even this week is a little bit light as far as the assignments, and that's on purpose so you guys can get caught up. We just had progress reports kind of come out last Friday, so this will give you guys a chance to get in some of the makeup work and late work that you got to get done. All right, so as a quick review, photosynthesis is the process where autotrophic organisms use sunlight to rearrange water and carbon dioxide into molecules and make glucose, which is a type of sugar, and oxygen. And you can see the balanced equation there for photosynthesis. And this illustrates the rearrangement of carbon dioxide and water into sugar and oxygen. All organisms, even heterotrophs, must rearrange molecules through chemical reactions to form molecules needed for life. Humans and other animals ingest their food, and through the process of digestion, the food is broken down into the smaller um, monosaccharides and single nucleic acids and individual amino acids, and then the body can take those little building blocks and build proteins and other things that the body might need. So let's talk about what a macromolecule is. Macromolecules are large molecules that are essential for the survival of life. There's four major macromolecules: carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. These molecules, as I just listed, all have different functions in the body, and we'll go over those one at a time as we kind of go through some of these macromolecules in the next couple slides. These macromolecules are built using something called monomers. Mono simply means one, and it's one building block. And if you string a whole bunch of these monomers together, they make a polymer, and poly means many. So monomers are smaller molecules that basically bond together to form these polymers, which are these larger macromolecules. And each macromolecule kind of has its own monomer. So for carbohydrates, the monomers are monosaccharides, single sugars. And the best example that we've been using is glucose. It's a monosaccharide type of sugar. And then lipids, the monomers are glycerol and fatty acid chains. And then nucleic acid, you have a nucleotide, which is made up of a phosphate group of sugar and a nitrogenous base. And then you have proteins, and the monomers of proteins are amino acids. And there's like 20 essential amino acids. And you don't have to memorize all 20 of them. You just need to kind of recognize the basic structure. And we'll go through that as we go through the notes. You'll see some pictures. So when we're talking about macromolecules, plants make monosaccharide monomer, glucose specifically, during photosynthesis. Glucose is a great building block for more complex sugars called polysaccharides. So two important polysaccharides that you see in plants are starch and cellulose. Now, starch is an energy molecule. It's basically short-term energy storage. And what we can do, or what plants do, I should say, is they take a whole bunch of glucose and they string them together and make starch. Now, starch is found in parts of the plants like um, the potato, in this is a tuber type of plant, or in the root of other plants like carrots. And these are the parts we eat, and we extract that starch through the digestive process and use it as our own energy source. Now, they also make cellulose. Now, cellulose is it's still a string of monosaccharides, right? Glucose, except the bonds form in an alternating pattern. So we don't do as well breaking down cellulose. That's kind of the roughage part of the plant. That's the part we eat and really can't break down too well and end up coming out the other end. And when we go to the bathroom, right, it kind of clears out our digestive system or goes through our digestive system. We might be able to extract a few little bit of nutrients from it, but for the most part, the cellulose part of the plants are roughage. That's what we call roughage, right? So the plants make starch to store energy and use at a later time, and then it makes cellulose. That's basically for the structural part. It's part of the cell walls of the plant, and it makes up the structural supports in leaves and stems and the trunks of trees and so on. So where do we get these macromolecules from? And I'm going to use this to kind of highlight these. In the picture on the right, you can see examples of each monomer. So here's a glucose molecule. That's a monosaccharide. That's one of the carbohydrate monomers. And then off here, you see what's called an amino acid. This is the building block of a protein. So you have the amino group right here, and then you have a carboxyl group, which is the acid portion, central carbon, and then a hydrogen. And then this R is a variable side chain. There's like 20 variations of what could be there, and they just kind of put an R to represent one of those 20 variations. Could be as simple as another hydrogen, or it could be these, single ring or double ring structures or branching structures. So there's 20 different variations, 20 essential amino acids. Okay, and then down here you have the nucleic acids. There's basically 5 of them: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, which are found in DNA, and then you replace thymine with uracil in RNA. And then a very simplified picture of this zigzagged line, that's a lipid, right? Here's your fatty acid. You have this long hydrocarbon tail. So the hexagon rings are the carbon rings. The zigzag lines in the fatty acids are made up of hydrocarbons, right? Hydrogen, carbon backbone. And then basically, for the most part, most of these are made up of hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and then you have some nitrogen sprinkled in there, and every once in a while some phosphorus or something like that. So where do we get these molecules from? So we remember, photosynthesis. We're taking water and carbon dioxide and we're making glucose, right? Well, that glucose is an energy molecule, and we use that energy molecule to do all these metabolic and anabolic processes, which are breaking down things and building other things up, right? So you have a digestive process where you break things down into individual monosaccharides and individual amino acids, and then our body does, through metabolism, takes these things and builds them back up into larger macromolecules like proteins and stuff like that inside of us. So the animals that eat plants, if they eat plants, they're basically taking that in and using that as their source. And even animals that don't eat plants, maybe carnivores, well, they're probably eating an animal that does eat a plant somewhere down the line. So they basically kind of rearrange these digested plant matter to fit their specific needs, and that's true of carnivores as well, right? So they're all still dependent on the rearrangement of molecules during photosynthesis. So really, everything starts with photosynthesis. So even organisms that don't eat the plants directly, they depend on animals that do eat the plants directly. All right, so what does this mean? So photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide and water, rearranges those molecules using sunlight to create sugar. That sugar then can be modified to be or used to create other needed macromolecules, but it all starts with photosynthesis. So consumers that eat plants and other organisms that have eaten plants to gain access to the required molecules as well. Therefore, without photosynthesis, about 99% of the life on Earth wouldn't exist. But the only thing you would have left would be maybe some chemosynthetic organisms like, single-celled organisms that live way at the bottom of the ocean near underwater volcanoes, or maybe certain organisms that um, live off of sulfur deposits coming out of hot springs or something to that effect. It wouldn't be very much. So sugar from photosynthesis, um, the sugar from photosynthesis, or what is ingested by the organism, contains most of the atoms to create these things. So it has amino acids for proteins, and proteins are used in various ways inside cell structure. So if you think about like um, the whether you have straight hair or curly hair, this is going to be determined by collagen fibers, which is a protein found in hair, the muscle fibers, the actin and myosin filaments that make up muscle tissue for cardiac muscle, skeletal muscle. Proteins, I kind of jokingly say, are the workhorse. They determine all your characteristics. If you have a certain skin pigmentation, it's because of a type of protein, melanin. If you have a certain type of, you know, uh, straight or curly hair, it's because of a certain type of protein. So DNA kind of gets all the glory But basically, all DNA is the instructions on how to make the various proteins within your body. And then you have fatty acids. These are glycerol for lipids, which are basically long-term energy storage. So you're sitting on the couch, kind of being a couch potato, watching TV or whatever, and you're eating food and you're not burning off any of those calories. Well, your body's going to take those calories and convert them into fatty acids. You can get kind of fatter. So if anybody's ever teasing you and saying, "Hey, you're getting kind of fat," you can just say, "Hey, I'm just doing some long-term energy storage." Um, but then if you start getting active, you get up off the couch and maybe start working out or diet and don't eat as much. Well, your body's going to take that fat and convert it or turn it into an energy source, and you're going to burn that fat off as you're working out and doing daily things. And then you got monosaccharides for carbohydrates. These are good short-term energy. So you have a couple different things here. You have super short-term energy, which are simple sugars like glucose or sucrose, monosaccharides, disaccharides. Very easy for the body to digest. It gives you that quick energy rush. So you eat I kind of do this set of notes almost every year right around Halloween. So you eat some Halloween candy, right? And you get this burst of energy, you get this rush of energy, but it doesn't last long. You usually end up crashing. And then the other thing you can do is you can take actual um, complex carbohydrates, pastas, potatoes, and these are longer strings of glucose stuck together. And your body has to break that down. And if you've ever done any long distance endurance sports, like marathons or something like that, what they typically do a couple days before their event is they do something called carb loading, where they eat lots of potato, lots of starch, lots of pasta, lots of different things like that. And then the body kind of breaks it down and it gives them a steady release of energy over their event. So when the event comes along, they have this kind of constant, body's constantly breaking up the carbohydrates and getting them a supply of energy. Um, and then you have the nucleotides. This is DNA and RNA. And these are, again, as I mentioned before, simply the instructions on how to make the various proteins in your body. And those proteins determine your characteristics. And we'll get into more details on that when we get into the unit on genetics and DNA and stuff. All right, so we're going to shift gears here real quick for the end, and we're going to talk about these chemical reactions and how they occur, and a special type of protein called an enzyme. So the final product of photosynthesis must be rearranged into all the other molecules, right? The rearrangement of the molecules happens during these chemical reactions. The problem is the order for the chemical reactions to take place, it actually requires quite a bit of energy. So instead of burning off all this energy and wasting this valuable energy to do these chemical reactions, our body develops something called enzymes. Enzymes are a special type of protein that basically helps reduce the amount of energy that's needed for a chemical reaction to take place. And the analogy they give here is one way to think about them is kind of like a Groupon to a concert. The Groupon lowers the amount of money required to see the concert, but you get to see the same concert. So we can extract or make these products that we want to make, but we can lower the amount of energy that's required to do that by using enzymes. So the organism is able to save vast amounts of energy because of enzymes. This allows for the rearrangement of atoms into products that the organism needs to survive. It happens at a faster rate, a lower energy cost for the living thing. And without the use of enzymes, the required energy for the reaction would probably more than the organism could possibly bring in, and therefore it would be very viable. You wouldn't have life evolving much further than single-celled organisms. So that takes us to the end, and I just wanted to give you a quick preview. Like I said, this is kind of a light week, so make sure you do all the self checks. I think there's two self checks that are going in as quizzes. And remember, you can do these multiple times. So keep doing them until you get 100%. Usually they're short, they're 2 or 3 questions long. And then I think there's one video to watch. And for that one video, do the Module 3 2.4 assignment, which is the Products of Photosynthesis Science Notebook. And it's on enzymes, basically what we just kind of finished with. And then remember, progress reports were completed last week. So I'm giving you this light week, and this is another opportunity for you to get all your makeup work in for Q2. Do that as soon as possible. You're starting to run out of time, right? We only got a few weeks left. And within that, I think we got about 5 or 6 weeks. So in that 5 or 6 weeks left, we have about 5 or 6 lessons. So it's going to be pretty close, and we're not going to have a whole lot of time to get anything done. So you got to get it done now. And I gave you 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks to kind of get caught up as well. So that takes us to the end. Have a good day, guys, and make sure you get all that work in so that we can get your grades up to par before the end of the semester.